Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Unreal Season 2 Episode 7. It's called Ambush. So spoilers for the episode as always. And this is a Patreon sponsored review, so thank you very much to Board Now for picking the show. So this is a big one. This is a beefy episode. This is one of those episodes where you kind of like see it as the turning point of the entire season in a lot of ways. And in the same way that Mary's death in season 1 was, this feels like, I mean, it may not be a death per se. Someone, like Romeo might be okay in the end, if he's lucky, but it feels just as bad. In fact, it feels worse in a lot of ways. But just the idea that the actions of the characters, specifically Rachel, has led to another tragedy. And it feels like it has big ramifications, big fallout, and it's interesting that it's happening this early in the season. And the funny thing about this episode, though, is that for the first half of the episode, I was mostly enjoying it. I think some of the stuff with Adam being back was maybe a little bit in the more soapy kind of side of things, the soap opera kind of. He wants to get back together. He's saying how much he cares about her. There's some good stuff there, though, with like Quinn's mind games and how it's all playing off of each other, because that stuff's all been well set up. But that's like, so much of the first half of the episode is all that stuff, with Adam being there and all the discussion around him being there and why he's here. And, Coleman asking questions to Rachel about who he is and her explaining things, but kind of being vague about elements of it. And then the back half of the episode completely takes over. Like, it completely makes you almost forget Adam was even here in the first half of the episode. It feels like 3 episodes ago that he showed up by the time you get to the back half of this episode. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not linked in terms of like the storyline and the thematic kind of through line, because part of the reason why Rachel ends up doing what she does is that she is motivated to try and further double down and prove that she's good at what she does, that she is destined for greater things with Coleman, and it's all about going against Quinn and getting like the right things and all that. So, like, yeah, I mean, this stuff gets dark here. Darius is sick of the bullshit in the show. He's sick of Rachel, and he asks 2 of the girls, Yael, or Rachel, and the blonde, I forget her name, the one who's the daughter of like the football kingpin, but like him and Romeo's back. So Romeo's been invited back by Darius because he wants someone he knows back, and he's sick of Rachel. So that's a bit of tension there. But the 4 of them go in the car, and they're going to go out and get a drink or something, and they're driving around. And Rachel gets the idea, and this is a good halfway through the episode at this point. I'll go back and talk about some of the other stuff, but she suggests that they call the police and report that the car's gone. And Coleman says, you can't do that. There's 2 black guys driving that car in this town. That could end very badly. And Rachel says, yeah, that, and I can't remember the exact line, but something like that's what we want, or that's TV. Think about what that would be like on TV. And he's like sold on it, and he's like, make the call. And immediately, like, there's so many times in this show where you feel a little bit of disgust in your stomach for like decisions that characters are making. Usually Rachel, sometimes Quinn, sometimes others, but often Rachel. This is one of these ones where it felt very unsettling the second she did this. The second she suggested this, a knot appeared in my stomach, and I was kind of like, oh god, how bad is this going to go? Like, it's obviously not going to be good. But are we going to just have a scary moment? Are we going to just have a moment where it feels threatening and then things will deflate? Are we going to have something that escalates, or is the worst going to happen? And the worst does happen. Romeo ends up getting shot, and it's even kind of Rachel's fault in the moment because she runs out to try and deflate it when she realizes how serious it's getting. But yeah, like, I think what I liked about this, like when we get the scene where the police officers pull them over, is there's like, we get all the sort of the tropes of this type of thing where like you see like the reactions of the girls in the back seat, and it's the harsh lights of the cop car are kind of flashing on their face, and it feels very kind of true to the way this type of thing's normally filmed. I thought that the tension here was very good because you genuinely felt like, I mean, they're playing it cool. They think, oh, they know who I am. I'm famous. I'll just sort of mention that, and It won't be a big deal. But Darius doesn't have his ID on him, so the cops don't like that. And they start, demanding to get out the car and things like that. And the whole time you kind of feel like a discomfort as it's building. And then because Rachel runs out yelling while the cops are on edge, it leads to, in Romeo moves, like it ends with this gunshot. And I mean, I thought the episode was ending. I thought it was going to cut to black and that was going to be the end. There's actually a good 10 minutes of stuff after this, but it felt like such an episode ender that I thought it was over. But no, we see the fallout of a lot of this. We see the fallout of now there's police and lawyers and all sorts around the set, around the mansion, asking questions. Quinn was away with her boyfriend during this and gets the call and ignores it a bunch of times until it's Gary from the network, and she finds out. And this is actually what's getting rid of Coleman. Coleman's been put out of the show now because this is seen as his fault seemingly by the network. Quinn's back in charge, but one of the best things about all of this, I think, is actually Jay's reaction. Because Madison is the one who reports that the car's been taken. And when Jay is talking to Madison and they're in kind of the aftermath of the gunshot and they're everyone's aware of what happened, Madison says that they shouldn't have taken the car. And Jay gets defensive and says, what, so they should have been pulled over for no reason? And Madison says, well, it wasn't for no reason. The car was reported stolen or missing or whatever by Rachel. And Jay's reaction to this, because Jay obviously is this character who recognizes a lot of the evil on the show. He's called it out sometimes, but he's part of the machine. He understands his part in it, and he tries to do good things here or there, but he knows what sort of scummy world he's in. He's always been aware of it. But he is sometimes disgusted by things that Rachel does. But Jay, being black, does react to this with a sort of a much quicker, the way his look just sharply changes the second Madison says that. It feels important, and it feels important that he immediately gets to confront Rachel about it, where Rachel, walks around the corner. She's kind of in a trance almost. She's barely processing anything, feeling guilty. Jay just outright says, you did this. You made this call for your ratings. I've seen a lot of sick shit in this show, but this is up there. And I think the best part of it is, one, the performance is good and the passion of it is all great. But he specifically points out, and this is a great point, this is the sort of thing that I might have thought of and talked about had he not already said it, is that this season started with Rachel going on and on about how she's doing this great thing by having the first black suitor, about being able to tell the story of a black man on this show, picking a wife and changing things and feeling that she's doing good. And then she pulls this trick. She pulls this to try and create drama. She intentionally puts them in danger, full well knowing the risks and the ramifications of it for trash TV. It's she wants to do this, she wants to be seen as important, she wants to be seen as doing all this, but in the end, all she's actually doing is exploiting him. Now, we already knew it was exploiting. We knew that was always what part of it was, if not all of it. But this decision to call the police the way she did just further emphasizes it. So this stings. This stings even more than her just doing the phone call in the first place. It stings because she was actively trying to portray herself as helping kind of the black community or doing something important or whatever you want to call it, only to then kind of almost literally throw him under the bus for the sake of ratings. And then obviously is acting shocked and saying, oh, obviously she doesn't think it was going to go that far. She didn't think anything really bad was going to happen. But she didn't stop to think about that, or if she did, she disregarded it. So yeah, and anyway, he adds on the final point, which is that this isn't your story to tell. You're trying to take someone else's story, someone else's struggle, someone else's life and culture, and you're trying to make it about you telling that story. So I think this stuff was really powerful. I think the tension of the actual, as soon as she made that suggestion about the phone call to the police, and them acknowledging in that conversation the danger that comes with that, but going through with it anyway, and sneaking out there with a camera to capture it, is maybe the most heinous thing they've ever done on the show. And they have done a lot of heinous things on this show. I have said that sentence where they keep kind of topping themselves. But this feels like even more pointed because it feels like, okay, you're not just like putting like a woman in danger because you're inviting their violent ex-husband around or whatever they've done in the past. These bigger things that Rachel's done for shock ratings. This feels like where we're getting into like, you know, culture and political things as well with the way she's like abusing things outside of her power of influence, or isn't her power of influence, but she's abusing the fact that she even has that influence. So like I think that stuff is great, and then Jay's reaction and him telling her basically how it is, and him having like a very genuine reaction to it was very nice, I thought. Because he is a main character, he's one of the regular characters on the show. It's nice to have his perspective on this and have him treat it like something serious. So I like that. I like that quite a bit, and I think everything after this with Adam coming back and trying to talk to Rachel in the truck, but she's crying. She just says, "Go away," and eventually the sound drains out, and it's just the music. So we're effectively watching her silent scream and kick and cry, and Adam just kind of sits there. He's got his arms up, kind of sort of blocking like her kicking feet. He's trying to be kind of comforting, and it's the sort of thing where like throughout the episode he's been a bit douchey with trying to like woo her back. But I couldn't help but notice the similarities to this like setup, as in she's in the truck with a guy she wants to leave or get away from, to Jeremy, right? Because that was a whole scene, and Jeremy got violent. He hit her, he pushed her, he hit her, and Adam doesn't do that. So bizarrely, I came out of this scene thinking Adam's an okay guy. For all of his faults, he's a better guy than Jeremy, because he didn't, you know, he ultimately left and, you know, never got threatening. He did get very forward earlier on though by unzipping her jeans and going for it with his hand. But like, you know, this was a stark difference to the scene with Jeremy a couple of episodes ago, and I think that was intentionally kind of done. It's even the exact same location as that scene, but yeah, it feels like there's big ramifications to this. You know, obviously she calls her mum, and this is a subject that they reminded us of in the Previously On. I almost felt like the Previously On was kind of like foreshadowing too much in this episode by showing Mary, by showing her mum. I was like, oh, and all these things kind of came back in some way where, okay, once again, her decisions have led to someone getting hurt or be dying. I mean, they do mention that Romeo is in the hospital. They mention that he's not dead yet, so he could die, he could live, but... And that's the thing here is like Darius was already like done with Rachel shit. Rachel tries to give him the speech about how this is good for him. This show's for you. I'm on your side. And he's like, I'm sick of hearing this speech, so you must be sick of telling it. He's just not interested in her bullshit. I cannot imagine any realm, especially if he finds out about who made the call to the police. I cannot imagine in any world that he would ever be okay with her again. And not even just not want to work with her, like he probably will hate her now. And that's actually one of the subjects that's kind of in this episode. And you know, we've talked a lot in the last few episodes about Rachel leaving this wake of destruction in her path, where, you know, nothing justifies what Jeremy did, but like he's coming after her angry. And Coleman points out that Adam's showing up, chasing her, and doing everything he can to try and woo her back. He talks about how, okay, you tell me you don't care about these various exes that you've got, but they all seem to have a lot of baggage. They all seem to show up trying to get at you in one way or another. And my exes don't do that. They don't come up to you. So this, you know, he points this out. And it feels like this idea of her actions causing lots of bad things in the people around her in one way or another, both professionally and the people in the shows, which we see her manipulate, but the idea that she's also in a less in-your-face way doing that to the people in her personal life as well. And I think that stuff here feels quite heavy, but at the same time, it's hard not to feel it's still a little bit sad for her when she's completely having a breakdown towards the end of the episode. And her mother comes and gets her and puts her into a hospital. She's in the hospital gown and she's taking medication. I can't imagine she's staying here for the rest of the season. Like, this almost feels like the season finale. It feels like you could end the season here and we would pick up, you know, months later in a new season when she gets out of hospital or something like that. But we're not. You know, we're going into episode 8 next time, so I don't know how we're going to deal with this. Quinn might be the answer. Quinn might come for her and convince her to leave. Because there's a whole sequence in here. In fact, one of the reasons why Quinn leaves to go and just spend the night with her boyfriend is that when she talks to Rachel, and Rachel is like, hey, you've been scheming, you're trying to break up me and Coleman, and so on and so on. You're obsessed with me, right? Stay out of my life. You know, she kind of like puts her foot down a little bit and accuses Quinn of being obsessed with her. And Quinn is staring daggers at her. Like, she's kind of hit a nerve. You can tell that Rachel's hit a nerve by saying this. So she decides to just, you know, when her boyfriend shows up, she's like, oh, let's just go. Let's get anywhere but here. And she goes and spends the night with him. They're having romantic times until the phone call eventually comes about what's happened on the show. It's a whole thing. But I think, again, this idea of like her seeing herself as the keeper, who, I mean, she even describes it to Coleman, who confronts her earlier in the episode, as like she's a ticking clock, the same one that kind of explodes eventually around people. And I'm on full-time bomb squad duty. Do you want to be on full-time bomb squad duty? And Coleman doesn't really know how to respond to that. And the rest of this episode just kind of indicates that Quinn, for as much as she's pulled some shady things in the show, and she absolutely, yeah, she's the one that called in Adam as the most recent example, she's kind of sadly right about Rachel, seemingly. And I think a lot of this show has very much been me questioning if these two are good for each other, if these two are toxic for each other, are they... You know, it's a complex relationship, and I think that's maybe the biggest compliment I can give to it, is that it's very complex, and it's hard to give it a straight answer, and maybe there's positives and flaws to what this relationship these two have as a characters. Whether it's like a mother-daughter kind of thing, whether it's a big sister, little sister type thing. Certainly, though, one thing that I didn't notice, one, Coleman didn't know who her mother was, because he had to ask who it was, so that was kind of an interesting moment, just because he doesn't even know who that is. And two, was Quinn's look on her face wasn't that of like, well, I don't know what it wasn't, but it was a look of concern. It felt like seeing the mum take her away. It felt kind of like one parent like has to say goodbye to their kid because legally they have to give the kid over to the other parent, but they know the other parent's like an alcoholic or abusive. And it like it's hurting her to like see her be taken away by her own mother, and it's almost like Quinn's become the surrogate mother, even if Rachel refuses to accept that and ask for it or want it. But it's like Quinn's concerned because she thinks Rachel's own mother is bad for her, which is funny because we spend so much time watching the show questioning, is Quinn good for Rachel? But maybe she is the lesser evil because Rachel's actual mother is bad for her, and we see her just be put into a hospital at the end of the episode and be doped up on medication. It does not seem like a healthy relationship she has there. It feels like the mother is a lot of things. We haven't really been around the mother that much. We had that one big scene in season one, or one episode in season one, where she's talking about like, you know, being on medication and her mother sort of like doing all of her psychiatry on her and stuff like that. But very curious to see how that goes. I think the other parallel that was very clear in this episode is the accusation that Rachel is with Coleman because he is an avenue for success, because that's her boss, and that effectively makes her part of the co-leadership of the show, right? When they're like mingling at the start of the episode and they're snuggling after sex, she's like, hey, you know, like, talk about our show, talk about our, you know, the we're in charge, it turns me on. This idea that like she's going to go on with Coleman to bigger and better things, and she's effectively leapfrogged Quinn by sleeping with the boss, right? The new showrunner. She's sleeping with him, so she gets heard, she gets listened to in a way that Quinn isn't. But Quinn effectively has done the same thing by going up over to like an even bigger boss. Not that he's like the boss of the network per se, but someone important who Coleman's going to kiss up to. And the best scene, this is what I thought the best scene in the episode was until the back half. The back half completely obliterated it because the back half did all the stuff with the car, the cops, and the fallout of that. But my favorite scene in the first half of the episode is the scene where Coleman and Rachel are like ready to like, no, we're going to like give Quinn what for because she called in Adam and I'm pissed about this. I'm going to tell her off. But when Quinn walks in with her boyfriend and Coleman sees him and he's like, hey, I want to talk to you about your ideas or whatever, Coleman just turns into a little bitch and says, yes, sir. I'm so excited, sir. We have no problems here. Oh, you're happy Adam's here? Oh, that's, yeah. We're going to run with Adam today. He completely flips. He said he was going to throw Adam away. He didn't want to have him on the show. But the second Quinn's big shot boyfriend from TV Land came in and said he liked the idea of Adam being here, he just started like bending over and saying, "Yes, sir, may I have another?" I'm being gratuitous with the way I'm saying it, but like you get the idea and you can feel it in the scene. And this is the moment where I went, "Oh, Quinn's effectively just done the same thing as Rachel. Quinn's just went higher up the food chain because all of a sudden her ideas are being enforced because someone more powerful than Coleman is connected to her, has got her, you know." And I'm not saying that's the reason why Quinn's doing this. I'm not saying Quinn's relationship is impure. I'm not saying she is just dating this guy as a means to an end. I do think they are actually like having attraction to each other. I think they have chemistry. I'm simply saying that in a weird way, both Quinn and Rachel have effectively pulled the same move this season, which just further shows that they're both so much alike. And maybe the reason why Quinn does want to look out for Rachel in her own twisted way is because she does recognize a lot of herself in her. And I've talked about that before, and about how maybe sometimes she's wrong. Maybe she's projecting a bit too much and she sees Rachel as a young version of herself, so she wants to protect her, but maybe she's assuming that Rachel's going to make the same mistakes. And maybe this episode she's just making whole new ones, which is to quote Ian Malcolm from The Lost World, Jurassic Park, which is not a good movie, but I remember that line when John Hammond says, "I'm not making the same mistakes." He's like, "No, you're making all new ones." But maybe this episode shows that, yeah, Quinn and Rachel are a lot alike, and we're seeing a lot of parallels between them, but Quinn does seem more mature and more healthy about it, even if she is ruthless, even if she is a lot of things. Because she is, you know, and she manipulates people. She makes people's lives miserable to do the show. She's doing all these things. All that's there, for sure. Like, there's no denying that. But it's so funny how little I've talked about Adam, really, other than his final scene, because honestly, given the back half of this episode, it doesn't really matter that he was hanging around making flirty eyes with Rachel, right? It was funny watching Quinn say how attractive he was in his Speedos and saying, "Oh, maybe we should have you sleep with the talent more often, Rachel." And she's saying all this in front of Coleman. She's intentionally trying to rub it all in. Like, that was funny, it was entertaining, but again, the back half of the episode completely changes the tone, and you like, it just doesn't feel like you want to really delve into that first half that much anymore. You know, I'm just like, everything's all about the back half. It's all about the tragedy and everything that comes from that. One of the things that's worth mentioning, though, is, so there was a whole thing with the girls this episode where they all had to present their different dates, and then Darius would pick one, and it ended up being like a comedy scene where the Chantel, who has the dead fiance, like said, "I want to prove to you," and they're on like a fake gondola, right? Madison made a whole big deal about buying a cheap canoe and turning it into a gondola because they're meant to be in Venice, and she is like, "I want to prove that I'm ready to move on from my dead fiance. I'm going to open my locket that has his ashes in it, and I'm going to spread them into the water." And Darius is close to, "Oh, this is too much. This is too much. Stop this." But she does it, and of course the wind blows it all into his face. So we get like some absurd comedy in the middle, which I guess is just to sort of lighten the mood before we make things all really dark and depressing in the back half. But wanted to mention that, and I think the other thing that should be mentioned is that Yael is up to something, right? She's asking more questions about stuff. She tries to flirt with Adam at one point. And Adam, again, showing that he's not like Jeremy, kind of just shoots her down and just sort of shoos her away over to the drinks table and says, "Oh, you're very nice. Go and have a drink. I'm not interested," right? He implies as much anyway. And he's too focused on Rachel. So it's like, okay, what's she up to? And at the end of the episode, we actually see Jeremy again because he comes to pick her up and she's like, "Oh God, thanks for getting me out of there. You know, things have been crazy." And he's like, "Oh, you don't know the half of it." And she's like, "Oh, could you tell me?" But just as they're driving off, she starts recording on her phone, like slyly, like without him noticing. So I think my current assumption is that she's some kind of like journalist or reporter who's trying to write a story about Rachel or the show. Or maybe it started off just been about the show and the secrets of what goes on at Everlasting because so much drama happened last year. But it's become more about Rachel because she's realized that Rachel's this central figure to all of it. And I suspect that Jeremy's probably going to mention the death from last season and get everyone into a lot of bother. I foresee big things coming from this, actually, and all of a sudden it feels like her flirting with Jeremy was actually just a means to an end, and which, funnily enough, makes her more like Rachel because she's manipulating people to make a story out of it. Right? May not be quite as trashy entertainment as TV, but trashy writing all the same. So yeah, I think that's kind of interesting that she actually is just a more covert version of Rachel. Not just hot Rachel, she's covert Rachel as well. So lots of things to come from that, I am going to assume, especially since we've got 3 episodes left. Like I said, they could have made this the finale and it would have been a hell of a cliffhanger to go out on. But we got 3 more episodes to go, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So that's my thoughts on the episode of UnReal. Thank you very much for joining me. You can support the show and all the content both in this channel and over at MailFuzz Movies over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or by becoming a YouTube member. Thanks to everyone who already supports the shows, and I will see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?